Edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Date and location soon. US President Donald Trump says the specifics of his second summit with North Korea's leader will be made public next week. This as Trump's point man on North Korea is due in Seoul for pre-summit talks. The National Pension Service, the nation's top institutional investor, is set to decide whether to actively exercise its shareholder rights, including playing a management role over one of Korean Air and Hanjin Group's holding firms. Plus, as high-stakes trade talks between the US and China rumble on in Washington, President Trump says he would either strike a very big trade deal with Beijing or simply postpone it. So let's start with news that the US envoy for North Korea will meet his North Korean counterpart early next week to discuss the next steps in dismantling the regime's nuclear weapons program. President Trump has also hinted that the date and venue for his second summit with Kim Jong-un will be announced in the coming days as well. Lee Seung-jae reports.
With the second Kim-Trump summit a matter of weeks away, the State Department has revealed U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, will travel to Seoul on Sunday for follow-up meetings with his North Korean counterpart. While it hasn't been confirmed, his counterpart is reported to be the former North Korean ambassador to Spain, Kim Hyuk-chul. The State Department added the two sides will discuss next steps to advance their objective of the final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea, but did not reveal the date or location of the talks. Biegun also plans to meet with his South Korean counterpart Lee Do-hoon during his stay in Seoul. This comes as President Trump said on Thursday that the date and the venue for the second Pyongyang-Washington summit will be revealed in the coming days.
So we're going to announce it pretty soon. We'll be announcing it early next week. And they very much want the meeting, and I think they really want to do something. We'll see, but I think they really want.
While the announcement is expected next week, President Trump hinted at where the summit will be held, saying he doesn't think it's any great secret. It's widely expected to take place in Vietnam. Ahead of the summit, Reuters reports that Biegun is calling on North Korea to provide a comprehensive declaration of its nuclear and missile programs, adding Washington has contingencies if the diplomatic process fails. Biegun also says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un committed during an October visit to Pyongyang by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to the dismantlement and destruction of North Korea's plutonium and uranium enrichment facilities. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's biggest institutional investor is the National Pension Service. It oversees billions upon billions of dollars, and today it's deciding whether to actively exercise its right as a shareholder in the company that owns Korean Air, the nation's flagship carrier, of course. The NPS is the airline's second biggest shareholder. Our Go Ryun-hee, I'm happy to say, is on the line for us with more. So Rooney, just walk us through what we're hearing thus far.
Hi, Mark. The National Pension Service on Friday will decide whether it will actively play a management role in Korean Air and Hanjin Kao, the holding company of Hanjin Group. The Pension Service's Fund Management Committee, chaired by the Minister of Health and Welfare, is holding a meeting in Seoul as we speak to decide if it needs to implement a stewardship role in the two companies. This refers a set of principles intended to get investors to actively participate in corporate governance to protect shareholders' interests. Currently, the NPS is the second largest shareholder of Korean Air with an 11.56% stake and the third largest stakeholder of Hanjin Group's holding company, Hanjin Kao, with a stake of 7.34%. That's all I have for now, but I'll bring more updates in our later newscast. Mark?
Okay, thank you very much for that report, Rooney. A big decision being made today regarding one of the nation's most well-known companies, Korean Air. Now, data released by South Korea's ministry that oversees trade shows Korean exports increased by 5.8% in January compared to the same period last year. To nearly 46.4 billion US dollars. The country's imports increased by 1.7% on year to record more than 45 billion. The ministry said despite an uptick in exports last month, a slump was witnessed in the country's main export items, semiconductors, as well as petrochemical goods. And they cited a drop in prices of semiconductors and international crude oil. It also pointed to external uncertainties stemming from the trade dispute between China and the US. South Korea's consumer prices rose in January at the slowest pace in 12 months because of that slide in oil prices. Statistics Korea said Friday that the consumer price index in January went up by 0.8% on year. Prices for agricultural products and services increased, but falling oil prices kept down the prices of industrial goods. Fuel prices, in particular, they declined by 9.7%. Now, core inflation, something that excludes volatile things like food and fuel, was up by 1.2%. The so-called Gwangju Job Project has been given the green light. The joint venture between South Korea's biggest car maker, Hyundai Motor, and the Gwangju City government should create employment opportunities in the country's southwest and hopefully revitalize that regional economy down there. Jo Sung-min reports.
The Gwangju City government and Hyundai Motor signed a joint venture deal Thursday, also known as the Gwangju Job Project, to build an auto plant in the country's urban center of the southwest. As the top two shareholders of the $629 million project, the city government will invest $53 million and Hyundai Motor $48 million. Hyundai Motor will build mini SUVs from the new plant starting in 2021 with an annual production capacity of 100,000 cars. Plant employees will work 44 hours a week and receive an annual salary of 35 million Korean won, or around $31,000, less than half the average wages earned by Hyundai Motor's unionized workers. The central and city government will provide benefits like public housing and health care. The agreement comes after months of negotiations when Hyundai Motor first proposed the deal last June. According to the deal, collective wage bargaining will not take place until the cumulative output of the new factory reaches 350,000 cars. But a provision was added, which states that details of the future wage negotiation can be discussed between the management and the union if a significant event takes place. The project is expected to create around 10,000 jobs in Gwangju. For Hyundai Motor, it will mark the first time in more than 2 decades that it's building a plant in Korea, as it has relocated the bulk of its manufacturing operations to countries like China, citing high labor costs at home.
The deal is significant as it's a public-private joint venture aimed at boosting the local economy amid struggling manufacturing sector and high unemployment. But there are still uncertainties as the agreement leaves the door for possible collective wage bargaining that could push up wages and add uncertainties to car production.
At the same time, experts say the deal's focus is largely on the supply side. They say for the joint venture to succeed in the long run, it needs a detailed plan to export the mini SUVs that suit consumers' preferences in the ever-competitive global auto market. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
The government has unveiled plans to privatize Daewoo Shipbuilding and marine engineering as part of efforts to boost competitiveness within South Korea's struggling shipbuilding sector. At a ministerial level meeting on Thursday, South Korea's finance minister Hong Nam-gi said the state-run Korea Development Bank, which holds a majority 55.7% stake in DSEM, plans to sell its shares to Hyundai Heavy Industries. With the takeover, the local shipbuilding industry will be dominated, if it goes through, by Hyundai Heavy and Samsung Heavy Industries. The divide between political parties here in South Korea is widening following the sentencing of Governor Kim Kyung-soo. The ruling Democratic Party has launched a committee that will look into the court's ruling to see if there are any contradictions there, while the main opposition, it launched a protest in front of the presidential office. Our political correspondent Kim Min-ji with the latest.
Wrangling between the parties has intensified after the sentencing of Gyeongsangnam-do Province Governor Kim Kyung-soo. The ruling Democratic Party, with which Kim is affiliated, launched a special committee on Thursday to deal with the aftermath. The party said the ruling was retaliation for efforts by the ruling party and the government to reform a judiciary plagued by influence peddling.
We will work with lawyers to thoroughly analyze the ruling and see if there are any contradictions, and will also continue to push to reform the judicial branch to curb the abuse of power.
Kim was sentenced on Wednesday to 2 years in prison for colluding with a blogger to manipulate the number of likes on online comments to benefit the Democratic Party ahead of the 2017 presidential election. Kim had been considered a strong possible candidate for the presidency and was a close aide to President Moon Jae-in, having served as a spokesperson during his presidential campaign. As widely expected, the conservative opposition is stepping up its offensive. The Liberty Korea Party held a protest in front of the presidential office, claiming that someone higher up must have known about the online influence campaign and asking whether the presidential office was aware of it.
This was a serious instance of illegal election campaigning that badly damaged our democracy. We cannot help but question the legitimacy of the last presidential election.
The divide among the parties is expected to deepen as Kim filed for an appeal on Thursday, paving way for another long legal battle. The Blue House has remained pretty much tight-lipped on the situation, but warned of stern action if there is any attempt to make an issue out of the presidential election's outcome. Although Kim Kyung-soo could still be exonerated, if the higher courts uphold the ruling, Kim will lose his seat as governor. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, as trade talks, extremely high-stakes ones at that, between the US and China rumble on in Washington, President Trump has waded in. He's saying he would either strike what he calls a very big trade deal with China or simply postpone it for now. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Adam. So, Adam, what's the latest we're hearing?
Well, President Trump has signaled that trade talks in Washington are going well, but he did say the US will not reach any final trade agreement with China until he sits down again with President Xi Jinping.
I think that probably the final deal will be made, if it's made, will be made between myself and President Xi.
He also said any deal made with China would be a big one, but added he is willing to wait for that to happen.
With China. This is either going to be a very big deal or it's going to be a deal that we'll just postpone for a little while.
When asked if he was willing to delay the March 2nd deadline on imposing tariffs on Chinese imports, Trump said he didn't know. He received a letter from Chinese President Xi Jinping sent via Beijing's Vice Premier Liu He, whom Trump met on Thursday. In the letter, she pledged to stay in close communication with the Trump administration and expressed hopes that both sides can reach an agreement. Expectations of the world's two biggest economies clinching any comprehensive deal over the next month are low. The US is essentially demanding China to lower its economic aspirations and claiming it is stealing American intellectual property. Beijing vehemently denies these allegations and is unlikely to easily give in to Washington's demands. A deadly Arctic cold snap that is sweeping through the United States Midwest has now claimed the lives of at least 8 people. Temperatures are still lingering between -20 and -30 degrees Celsius in most parts, with the wind chill making it feel more like -50. Most services and operations have grinded to a halt in the region, including transport and schools, as well as power lines and water pipes. Several states have also declared states of emergency. The deep freeze is expected to last for another day or two before starting to slightly warm up. Venezuela's self-proclaimed interim president Juan Guaido says a police unit accused of extrajudicial killings visited his home on Thursday. He claimed the squad was sent under orders from sitting President Nicolas Maduro in an attempt to suppress the opposition leader. Guaido said he was out at an event during the time, adding the police had asked for his wife, who was at home with their 20-month-old daughter. The squad's commander denied that happened. The United States, which backs Guaido, has warned of serious consequences if Maduro's government harms him.
Thank you as always there to our Noah Ram for the world news. Now, the South Korean people are paying their respects today to the late Kim Bok-dong, a woman who was sexually enslaved by the Japanese military during World War II and later became an iconic activist for justice. Kim died early this week at the age of 93. Hundreds of people have gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul as part of her funeral, where her coffin will be brought for a sending off. For decades, Kim had demanded that Japan apologize sincerely for its crimes and that it compensate its victims. With Kim's death, there are only 23 survivors of Japan's sexual slavery still living in Korea, raising concerns that time is running out for them to get a sincere apology. A third case of foot-and-mouth disease was confirmed on Thursday in Chungju, Bokdong province, where 11 cows were reportedly showing symptoms of the highly contagious disease. The latest case is the first detected outside of Gwangju province. The South Korean government imposed a 48-hour nationwide ban on animal movement as of 6 p.m. Thursday in light of the outbreak. The ban will restrict the movement of livestock, including pigs and cows, as well as vehicles that carry animal feed. The government will release a statement today on measures to prevent the further spread of the disease. Now, today is a wonderful day for tens of thousands of South Korea's active duty soldiers, as they will be allowed to leave base after finishing their daily duties. The Defense Ministry says leaves will be granted twice a month for up to 4 hours a day. Now, soldiers can go on leave at 5:30 p.m. but must return by 9:30 p.m. for roll call. While off base, they can do pretty much what they like, as long as it doesn't violate the military's strict code of conduct. However, the ministry says no more than 35% of troops at a single base should be away at one time. It added that the new regulations are being introduced as this system ran smoothly during a trial run last August. It's been a year since the so-called well-dying law took effect here in South Korea, and thousands of terminally ill patients have chosen that option to end their life support. Experts say perceptions are steadily changing, but it could still be a while before death becomes a more comfortable issue of discussion for people here in South Korea. Oh Soo-young reports.
Allowing death with dignity is still a work in progress. A year after a landmark law was passed, allowing terminally ill patients to end or refuse life-sustaining treatments. Under the so-called well-dying law, life support ended for some 35,431 patients over the past year, while more than 100,000 people have signed advanced medical directives. The figures have been growing by the thousands every month.
We've had about 10,000 people sign the advance directive since the law went into effect. I remember the first day when a person in their 80s was waiting outside to sign the directive. Since then, I've received people in their 20s, 40s, 60s, all age groups.
According to experts, the growing figures represent a significant shift of perception across the Korean society, which under Confucian values have tended to continue life-sustaining treatments for their loved ones. In a survey released last week, more than half the respondents, comprised of cancer patients and members of the public, were found to be in favour of ending life support in futile situations. Despite the changes accomplished so far, some obstacles still remain. A number of medical experts have said the approval standards are too high.
In some countries, you can fill out and submit an advance directive online. But in Korea, an applicant must consult a counselor who confirms the patient's identity and intention. Initiating a life-sustaining treatment plan is also complicated, especially when the patient is unconscious. The law will soon be revised to allow just immediate relatives to give consent instead of all the family members. but it is still an issue for people who have no relatives or have been estranged from them.
Death is still a weighty topic to discuss and a weightier decision to make. So experts say revisions to the law, while needed, should not be made hastily. There also needs to be more open discussions in Korean society so that decisions about the end of life are made rationally and not out of helplessness and fear. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, CES, the world's biggest tech show, came to a close in Las Vegas last month. Our Kim Hae-sung, who was fortunate enough to go and travel over there to report on it, now has this new report on the innovative products released by smaller size firms. It isn't all Samsung and LG displaying their products in Las Vegas during the show, and she found out their strategies to bring their products that are less well known to consumers in Korea and around the world.
The skin scanner won an award in biotech at this year's CES Innovation Awards. In 10 seconds, Lumini analyzes user skin, checking for 6 signs including melanin and pore size using its AI-based algorithms and big data. Then the scanner recommends cosmetic treatments like moisturizers that best suit the user.
Our goal is to make it easy for consumers to improve their skin's health and prevent diseases as the symptoms are usually shown by their skin. At CES, we were able to expand our pool of business partners, and we're now working with department stores and pharmacies, including ones in Italy and the US.
Naver Labs, an affiliate of Korea's portal giant Naver, won a CES Innovation Award in robotics and drones. Using a 5G network, the robotic arm can be controlled in real time from remote locations, meaning it can potentially be used for medical purposes. Following CES, Naver Labs says it is reviewing various partnership projects and has signed an MOU with LG Electronics to collaborate on guidance robots.
This sleek, sporty-looking massage chair, which looks like it came straight out of the movie Transformers, won a CES Innovation Award in the Home Appliances category.
The Lamborghini massage chair provides 23 customized massages by using its sensors to measure user stress levels and heart rate to help facilitate relaxation on top of the luxury of a supercar speaker.
It's the first time a chair company has collaborated with an automaker to provide a luxury lifestyle experience for consumers. Our massage programs like the brain massage passed clinical tests and in particular drew attention from professional sports teams and CES. We are selling the products in Korea now and plan to expand into the US and China this year.
CES, the world's biggest tech show, has come to an end. But for innovative companies, it has marked a new beginning to work with business partners and bring their products to market. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Good morning. Most areas had a freezing morning on this first day of February. For many inland areas, there's a cold wave advisory still in effect. But the cold snap will be short-lived and will get eased as the day goes on. And readings will be right back up to seasonal averages by the afternoon under plenty of sunshine in most areas along with decent air quality. But the sudden drop in temperatures can make you vulnerable to cold and flu. So be sure to drink plenty of warm water and bundle up to stay warm. The last thing we would want is to have to stay in bed during that 3-day Lunar New Year holiday fighting a virus. In fact, the weather is looking optimal for the holiday. No bone-chilling cold or snow. In fact, next Monday is Ipchun already, the traditional start of spring. So it's probably safe to say the coldest part of winter has passed. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to us on Arirang TV. A reminder that we'll have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.